Alrighty, guys. Today is what's today? October 22nd, 2025. You're tuning in to the 12 at 12 with Paul Smith from 12 Rivers Realty. We're going to talk about a bunch of things today. One, we're going to talk about potential ASA rail, which is going to be something that could kind of change the way that Austin and San Antonio kind of thrive together, right? As we start to build almost like a super metropolis. We're going to talk about PGA coming into Barton Creek. You know, we used to have an event over at ACC. Shout out, we got Clarissa in the house. Alicia, thanks for jumping in. Carlos, man, thanks for jumping in here. Guys, you're watching Paul Smith with the 12 at 12. We're kind of going down the rundown of some things we're going to talk about today. One, going to be the potential ASA rail, which has got huge potential for Austin, especially I think as Austin grows. Two, we've got PGA coming back to Austin, right? So we had a tour event at ACC. The members at ACC didn't love that. So that pulled out. Interesting. There's going to be a new redevelopment for the YMCA downtown. What does that mean for downtown and specifically that area? I think that'll be cool. And then we'll just talk about some different things going on in business and whatnot. And so without further ado, I'll go ahead and get jumping in here as we're in our third week of Q4. Guys, this is the time, if you haven't already started, to start your planning for next year. If you don't know what that means, definitely hit me up. If you own a business, let's start talking about your numbers and projections for next year. Also, this is the time to start putting together your holiday list and sending out holiday cards. If you are a service-based business, definitely something that you should be doing is sending out holiday cards, stuff like that. Now is the time to do that and get that list together. Also, while you're doing that, this is a great time to make sure that your CRM is up to date, right? Making sure that your contact management system is up to date, adding any new clients, taking out any old clients. Also, going through and firing people that you don't want to work with is just something that just feels good. For those that have ever done it, it's pretty amazing. For those that want to do it, I strongly suggest that you do it. Yeah, Robert, thanks for jumping in here, man. Hope all's well. Guys, the first thing we're going to talk about today is the ASA rail. That stands for the Austin San Antonio rail. This rail has been brought up about 3 different times throughout my career. And it starts in San Antonio, comes up 35, makes its way up 35 all the way to Georgetown. And so there's currently an inactive or vacated rail line that this would ride along, and which would be great because I really think at some point San Antonio and Austin is going to turn into a DFW, right? So you'll have your Dallas-Fort Worth as its own town, and then you'll have Dallas. And so Fort Worth and then Dallas, but combined, it ends up making basically like a super MSA. I think that's going to happen with Austin, honestly. And so this rail line would be great for that. I have a projection or a prediction. I think that at some point within the next, let's call it 10 years, Austin and San Antonio get an MLB team. And I think a place for that would be Buda, Kyle, New Braunfels in that area, San Marcos, which would be perfect because then you're pulling from 2 cities. You're pulling from Austin and you're pulling from San Antonio. And if you think about like in Arlington and how Arlington has exploded, that's huge, right? You've got the Rangers, you've got the Cowboys in that area. And what would that do for that area? The interesting thing is going to be if they ever decide to put a DFW size airport in there, right? Because Austin is kind of capped in how far it can grow or how big it can grow. And based on the city's expansion right now, I bet you that, let's call it over the next 10 to 20 years, we outgrow the capacity of our airport and they're going to be looking for something much larger. And again, it really does make sense to put it in between Austin and San Antonio because you have about 2 million people in each MSA. If you combine those, all of a sudden now we're probably looking at somewhere around like a 5 million MSA, which is that's where we want to go. And that's where it's going to be going. So if you're thinking about that on the investment front, what does that mean? Also, if you start to kind of take a little bit of interest in this project to say where the rail stop's going to be, there's a lot of money in buying things around rail stops. If you think about, for example, the Crestview Station up off of Airport and Lamar, That was a 70-acre site that used to be an environmental site or a chemical site back in the day. By the way, wouldn't want to live there for the sake of getting like a sixth toe or a third eye or something. But at the same time, right, that is a spot that people didn't know about. Well, what ended up happening was as that was built, if you bought within 8 blocks of that Crestview Station, your real estate values jumped up drastically compared to the rest of the real estate in the area. That's going to be something that would be similar to something like this here with the ASA rail. And so knowing where they're going to put these stops is a potential opportunity to invest. I would definitely suggest keeping track of this, especially if you live in these areas. Man, we got crime by design in here. Ray, thanks for jumping in here, bro. Appreciate you. But to me, like as an investment, as a potential investment vehicle down the road, designating where these light rail or in this case, high speed rail stops are going to be is going to be a great opportunity, especially to own commercial in that area because people are going to be getting off. They're going to be, looking to either, is there going to be coffee shops in that area? There's going to be business that comes around these stops. And I bet you there's going to be a lot of towns that are lobbying for these. And in the old rail, there's only 2 areas where basically you've got the commuter rail in Austin or the light rail, and where the ASA rail where they would touch was at the Kramer Station and the Domain, and then right downtown. So those are the 2 areas where you could get off one and then walk to the other. So I think that's definitely something that I will be paying attention to, and they're just now starting the feasibility. So this is something that is very, very early on. But again, what we're doing is we're looking for trends and we're looking for ways to invest. And this is something that I would definitely start to really pay a lot more attention to. Because could you imagine if you could literally just jump on a train and go hang out in San Antonio for the day, right? You can catch a Spurs game. Or if for whatever reason the Spurs end up maybe playing more games in Austin because San Antonio doesn't appreciate the Spurs, then all of a sudden it would be a lot easier for people from San Antonio to come hang out in Austin and vice versa. So that's something where if we start to have those professional teams, it really makes it a lot easier to get people between both cities. Also, I don't know if you guys know this, but about 40% of Austin's labor force lives in San Antonio or just north of San Antonio. The reason for that is because it's so much cheaper to live in San Antonio than it is Austin. So I do think one thing that would be a big benefit of this is the Austin labor force being able to stretch the Austin labor force into San Antonio means that we would have access to cheaper labor, which is a good thing overall for businesses and whatnot. And also it makes San Antonio, kind of more of a viable investment because right now, I think for me, if I'm investing in Austin, I'm hyper local to Austin. This would be that I maybe start to pay attention to some of the things that are happening in San Antonio, at least in North San Antonio, where you kind of have that kind of overlap and whatnot. Thinking of like a Frisco in Dallas or in Arlington, Plano, kind of what's happened in those communities and how those have all sprouted out because of that. So just a thought there as far as that ASA route goes. And right now they're saying that there's 4.5 million residents that this would affect. So that's something that is really cool, kind of really positive, and something that also, if you think about it, how many people would that get off 35? Because one of the biggest complaints right now about Austin is traffic, right? And if you compare Austin traffic to LA, Houston, New York, the Bay, we really don't have traffic compared to them, honestly. Like the LA traffic is brutal. It's so bad that people make jokes about it. And so really we're starting to have big city problems. And so a way to kind of get around that would be being able to add rail or other modes of transportation that are not just automotive. Although, as you guys know, Austin is doing cap and stitch, which is in the process of dropping 35 in 2 areas, basically where you'll actually be able to walk across 35. That is one thing that's going to be done to try to help alleviate. But by the time that's done, I think Austin will have expanded so much that I don't necessarily know if that'll make a difference at that point. So we'll see. I think traffic is always going to be a thing here. So it just kind of is what it is. Man, guys, next thing I want to talk about is that the PGA is coming back to Austin, and it's going to be at Barton Creek. I'm currently a member at Barton Creek, which is great. I'm going to have to find out kind of what that means for us. I'm sure it means that the courses will be, they'll throw even more money into the course, which I think is great as far as that goes. I've been a member at Barton since 2013 and just kind of watched the redevelopment of Omni Barton Creek. When I jumped in, it was actually Club Corp, and now it's part of Omni. And I think they've done a great job out there. So I'm excited to see that. Will be interesting to see what the, kind of what the membership actually thinks of this. But that means that's going to bring additional people to the hill country. It's going to bring people out to Barton Creek. I think that it will certainly have a positive effect for certainly short-term rentals in the West Austin corridor, going down into, say, Travis Country, Circle C, areas where you have easy access to these golf courses. So that way there you can do that. So I do think there'll be some sort of an economic impact. It'll be interesting to see exactly what that is. It looks like it's going to be starting in 2026, which is awesome. So means I apparently need to get out and play more golf because I'm not playing enough, obviously. So we'll figure that out there. But yeah, guys, again, this is Paul Smith tuning in to the 12 at 12. It's October 22nd. Guys, we have 6 weeks left in the year. If you're in real estate, I strongly suggest that if your clients are trying to sell this year, now is the time to do some sort of price drops, because there's going to be people that want to buy and close by end of year. And now would be the time to make those adjustments, because really think about it. It takes, and I think I was wrong. Actually, it's probably more like 10 months left or 10 weeks left in the year. And so now's the time to go ahead and try to get those price drops. So that way there, your client can sell that property this year versus next year. Having said that, though, like if you're an investor and you're looking to close out on a property, unless if you're taking out a loss in some way, for me, I would prefer to close on January 1st versus December 31st. And here's why, is because if I close on December 31st of this year, I have to pay the taxes on that gain on April 15th of this year. If I close on January 1st, that means that those taxes would be due the following April 15th. Now that gives me time to go ahead and reinvest that money and try to make money with the potential taxes that would be due. Again, as you know, I'm not a CPA. I definitely don't even play one on TV. So if you want to know more about that, ask your CPA. But that would be one thought, is to say, okay, if I've got something under contract and I can close either this year or next year, depending on how my tax returns look and if I need the income or the loss or whatnot. But a lot of times, if there's a large gain, I'll take it on the first. So that way there, I can kick those taxes down the road and actually reinvest reinvest those gains at that point to try to make more money with that money before I have to go ahead and pay those taxes. As what else is going on here, guys? This is, as you guys know as well, this is an AMA, so you guys can ask me anything. So if there's any questions that you have about real estate, please feel free to let me know. Want to touch on something real quickly. Last week I spoke about the homeless shelter coming in over off of East Altorf and 35. And, I want everybody to know that, like I think those that are experiencing homelessness, I'm here to help in any way, shape, or form. And if you guys have any ideas on how I can help, please let me know. I've definitely done some things to raise money and whatnot. And it's a very tough topic, and it's causing a lot of conversation for both sides. And I can see both sides of it. If I'm a property owner and I wouldn't want my property values to go down, I understand that. Then also too, as being somebody with compassion, we have to be able to take care of our own and help those specifically that are experiencing homeless or folks with mental health. And so definitely that, there has to be facilities for this. Understand that. And I think it can also be true to say that in those neighborhoods, unfortunately, property values may experience a decline because of that being there, for all the same reasons that we're talking about right now, with ASA rail light stops, MLB coming in potentially to Austin and San Antonio in some time. Those are things that are positive things that would positively affect your values potentially. If you have something that's a potential negative, like say, for example, if your property backs up to Mopac, your property is going to be less than something that is an interior property, because what the property abuts up next to is something that could be perceived as a negative. Now, again, perception is reality. And what we're talking about here is perception. The perception of it being next to Mopac, or in this case, potentially a shelter for folks that are experiencing homelessness, that could prevent a buyer from buying there. Well, if you have something that makes your home less attractive, ultimately, there's a chance that it'll be worth less. And so that was all I was saying with that. But either way, I think this is one of those things where, it's, we've got to figure out some sort of a solution. And so we'll kind of go that way with it. As I don't know if you know this, but the YMCA downtown is a wonderful piece of property, right? And where it's located. And so they're actually going to be doing a redevelopment of the YMCA. There's going to be like a smart housing component and a bunch of other things as well. So I'll go ahead and be posting that. But seeing what's going to happen at the YMCA is pretty neat because right now that YMCA to me it doesn't necessarily meet up to the location, right? So town like YMCA redevelopment to have major housing component. Again, when it comes to city of Austin, they're trying to push a what's called like a smart housing component. So trying to say that a certain percentage of the new development is going to include, let's say 60-70% of the median income in Austin. And so then say the developer has to sell and or rent, let's say 20% of the homes to people that are making 60% of the median home value, right? And that's part of that affordability component. And by doing so, then the developer a lot of times will receive some sort of a density bonus by allowing that, right? So maybe they were only able to go up 6 stories and now they can go up 9 because they're going to make a component of that part of the smart housing component here. Guys, again, this is Paul Smith with 12 Rivers and you're 12 at 12. So far we've talked about things happening in Q4, the Austin San Antonio rail, YMCA being redeveloped with a smart housing component, which I think is going to be great. Kind of touched again on what's happening over off of Altorf and 35 over by Travis Heights. So yeah, guys, if you have any other questions, please feel free to let me know. Shout out here. We got Alana in the house. Alana, thanks for jumping in here. Crawford Luxury. And I see you doing some great things, man. Thanks for jumping in. And let's see, what else do we have going on right now? Man, interesting is market stats. Market stats just came out. And you're hearing a lot of people tell me, man, Austin prices are down 24% from the height. Guys, surprise, it's been that for a while, honestly. It's been 20% for a while, right? So the height was May and June of 2022. Our median price was right at about 550,000, somewhere in that range. Now we're hovering in that like 430 range, somewhere in there, 450 range. And it ends up being about 20%, 25% off that. But it's been that for a minute. And really the thing is, if you see, is that over the past couple of years, it's just been kind of flat. There hasn't been a huge increase. There hasn't been a huge decrease as far as prices go, which makes me believe that it's kind of bottomed out and people are just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. I think it's going to be very rate specific. If we start to see some sort of a decrease in interest rates, or if we start to see quantitative easing in any way, because of whatever's happening in the overall kind of macro world versus micro world, I think that's something that will definitely positively affect Austin more so than other cities. I feel like we're just kind of just chilling around, waiting. We're on the starter block, ready for the gun to go off. And when that happens, the starting gun goes off. I think it's going to be a race. And so making sure that you've got all your stuff ready to go. So that way whenever there is some sort of a drop or a dip, one, you can capitalize on that rate drop. Because again, a 0.5 point rate drop equates to about 6 to 7% value. And that's something that can happen overnight. That could be something based on something that Powell says. That could be something based on something that happens globally. If they think that they're going to drop interest rates, which seems like now maybe they're at a 50-50 as far as looking at the Fed rate versus the 10-year Treasury. And shit, at the end of the day, the government's still shut down, right? And so I'll tell you who I really feel for is people that work for the government that are deemed necessary, that aren't getting paychecks, right? Because this is about the first 2-week cycle of that where they're not going to get paid. My question is, how many people do you think that are working for the government, and what percentage of people that are working for the government have the ability to go 2 paychecks to be able to make their payments, to be able to make their rent? And then what does that affect from there, right? Not only now, our landlords, are they set in a situation where they can't evict them? Now the landlord might not be able to pay their rent, right? If they were depending on that rent to pay their mortgage, because maybe they don't have enough money to be able to do that. And so unfortunately, that's a real thing that we're looking at right now. And as that continues to go, the longer it goes, I think the more it's going to hurt. if you're an air traffic controller right now, you're 2 weeks in. What if you're 30 days in? At what point are you like, fuck it, I'm not gonna do this anymore? I did this job because of security, and now it doesn't feel very secure, and I need to work. My family, like, there's going to be a point where people need to make a decision about their families and being able to work, and hopefully they get back pay. I don't know anything about that, but to any folks that are out there that are, what I'd be interested to see is, are there any nonprofits out there designed to help people in those situations right now? Guys, if there's any that go ahead and tag them, go ahead and put them in here. So that way there we can start to help people out, because there's going to be people that are going to be in need, and hopefully we can do that. Guys, again, this is Paul Smith with the 12 at 12. Thank you guys for tuning in. It's been a pleasure as always. Enjoy your week, and let's get it. Y'all be good.